I have been working with the deaf community here in the Minot area for about 20 years. I became certified about 6 years ago, and we have a deaf ministry at our church, so I have connections with a lot of the deaf folks in this community and throughout North Dakota, actually. I became involved in the news press conferences for the flooding here in Minot back when it was just beginning, the very mid-June. I received a phone call from our local television station. They had been receiving little hits on Facebook saying, okay, how come the deaf folks don't know what's going on because there's no scroll on the televisions for those live conferences. So they contacted me, asked if I'd be willing to try to do that. I in turn contacted our mayor, Kurt Zimbelman, and he agreed, yes, we do need this type of service available too. So it began by word of mouth, basically, and the need was expressed by the population themselves. In the events that I've been working in this summer, I've basically been using American Sign Language because I'm mostly speaking with, I believe, deaf adults. If I were working in a school system, I would maybe be doing more signing exact English so the child can learn the English language in the proper word order. But in general, I try to use American Sign Language because that's our general public, and most deaf people, as they grow from a child to their adult years, they move into the American Sign Language because that's their natural language. That's the natural language of the deaf folks. When I first began interpreting for the press conferences here in Minot, I didn't realize that there were deaf people watching across the nation. I had no idea. I knew that the room was full of media all across the nation, but I had no idea the extent that this would be reaching. I would get texts from people afterwards or emails saying, I live in West Virginia or I live in California and my parents are hearing, I'm deaf. Thank you. We're knowing what's going on right on the moment. So it was amazing to see how widespread it really was once I started doing those conferences. And when I wouldn't be at a conference, I got a lot of texts and emails saying, okay, where were you? Why aren't you there? So it really made a difference with the communities, the deaf population across the nation. I have a full-time job. I actually work for the North Dakota Department of Human Services, and I am considered the Aging Services Program Administrator. At the time of the flood, I contacted my supervisor, and she went up the chain of command, and they said, yes, by all means, you do what we need to for our population. I had to actually keep clothes in my car because as an interpreter, you need to wear dark colors or dark plain colors like the navies, the blacks, because deaf individuals it's difficult to understand what you're signing with your hands if you have several plaids or if you have bright colored shirts or nail polish and those things. So I had to be basically ready, and I would have to keep that change of clothes because I wanted to be available when the mayor needed to do a press conference. I wanted to be there for those folks that needed it. I noticed the rooms were full. They were completely full in the press conference rooms. And after each time, it became more and more apparent to me that this was something that wasn't being done throughout the nation in times of disaster. And I was taken aback by that. I was approached by the Region 8 director, Robin Finnegan for FEMA, and she was able to sign to me. She graduated apparently from the Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. So she was very well aware of the need for sign language interpreters across the nation, and she was very complimentary and wanted to hear more about what I do. I was contacted by David Schad, Regional Disability Integration Specialist with FEMA. David requested a meeting and we visited, and I expressed that I was very concerned about the needs of our deaf population in North Dakota and in the nation in times of disaster. I think it's very important that those people with disabilities are able to know what's going on at the same time that our hearing people are. After visiting with David, it was very apparent that FEMA was very on board with this same concept and wasn't but a few weeks, and I was receiving information from David and began getting information from FEMA, and they were interested in contracting with me to do more interpreting, more being available in community meetings and other sorts of meetings that came up through this disaster. Here in the Minot area, I think we're very fortunate. We have been able to provide interpreters for this whole disaster that we've been going through with the flooding. But previous to that, in the Minot area, we've also been able to do it for various community meetings and just events. And I find this whole experience with the flooding and the disaster here in Minot, North Dakota, as a wonderful opportunity to share with other communities that this is a huge need. I've had the opportunity through this situation to interpret for state legislators, for our federal individuals, for Janet Napolitano. I've had an opportunity to do these things through this flood, and I look at it as a wonderful opportunity to bring information to our deaf people and others. I think that is of utmost importance because these people don't have that opportunity necessarily, and they can see it if it's on written or if it's closed caption on the screen. But if it's something live and they're not able to bring that information, I think it's very, very important. And community meetings, it should not even be a question of any type of community meetings. It shouldn't even be a question whether we have an interpreter or not. It should be they will be there. So it's more important for them to feel as normal as possible. You know, it's bad enough that, and sad enough that they have issues with the flooding or other disasters that could be anywhere in the nation. But when they have a disaster that happens in their lives, to have to worry about, am I going to understand what's being said, at the same time, it triples their stress and their problems. And having to deal with all these agencies, when you go to the recovery center, it's overwhelming anyway. But then when you have a communication issue, they're not even going to go, and they need to have the right to be able to show up at the disaster recovery sites and say, I need help, I require an interpreter, and that person be there. So I feel that this has been a huge opportunity educationally across the nation. And I'm hoping that, my hope is that this will continue and that the state of North Dakota and other states will see that that's a priority, that when there's a meeting of any kind, that needs to be already assumed that there will be an interpreter. Next question from the media. That's what I'm used to. Are there any other comments or questions? I have, yeah, okay.